Well, we'll go ahead and get started. I imagine a few others will join in. Nevertheless, hello everyone. My name is Bryan Kanney. I'm Assistant Director for Career Development at the Heller School. I want to thank you all for being here today. Before I ask our guests to self-introduce, I did want to make everyone aware that today's session is being recorded. If you don't wish to have your face or your voice recorded, you are welcome to remain off camera, off mic. If you just want to chat, you can chat, and I'll transfer those questions or comments over to our guest. But without further ado, you're not here for me. I want to turn it over to Filimon so that he may proceed with his presentation. So thank you for being here today.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks for having me. Hi, everyone. My name is Filimon Ghebretinsae. I studied at the Heller School from 2016 to 18 and did the MS and SID programs. I am based out of Seattle, originally from Eritrea. Was born in Eritrea, but I've lived stateside for most of my life. And just super excited to be here with you. This is a very informal presentation, so please feel free to jump in with questions or comments. Yeah, feel free to put your questions in the chat as well. So I'll go ahead and jump right in. Let me see if I can put this in presentation mode. Can we see that in presentation mode, Brian?
Yes, I can see it.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
Yeah, so like I said, I did the MS and the SID program when I was at Heller. So some of my highlight from being a student at the Heller School, I really enjoyed my time at Heller. I really one of the most exciting things for me was kind of being having classmates, like in classroom discussions with people from different countries with rich and diverse experiences. So that was very insightful to kind of hear real world examples from other students in my classroom. So that was exciting. Also had lots of networking and mentorship opportunities while I was at Heller. So I encourage you all to take advantage of those. And then in between the two programs, I did a practicum here in the Seattle area with World Vision, which kind of helped me understand the global health space a bit better and make some connections there. Okay, I'm trying to go next. Okay, so gone too far. So since I left Heller, I've worked in two different organizations. Sorry, my slides are moving really, really slow. Okay. So since I left Heller, I've worked with two organizations. So right out of Heller, I worked as a project manager with a small local organization based out of Seattle here called Panorama Global. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. And I currently work with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And I assume people are more interested in learning about that. So I'll spend a bit more time talking about my current role. Okay, so Panorama Global is a small global health consulting firm based out of Seattle. At the time in 2018, as some of you might remember, there was the second largest Ebola outbreak had taken place in the DRC. And this was declared as an international emergency by the World Health Organization. We were working with a pharmaceutical company who at the time had an unlicensed Ebola vaccine, and they were trying to vaccinate people during that outbreak. So we were brought in as global health experts to really help them manage the situation and help them respond. Because as you know, pharma companies don't interact with global health much, so they needed some guidance. So within this, I was involved in kind of developing their overall communication strategy, their stakeholder engagement and strategy, and event strategy to really help them understand the situation and help them understand where they should plug in. So we kind of looked at who are their stakeholders, how they should engage with them, and then what events throughout the year should they be kind of thinking about, and where they should they be plugging in. I also manage the kind of day-to-day of the project to ensure deliverables from our end were on time and within scope and budget. And then outside of this, I kind of worked with the CEO to help identify new business opportunities and kind of worked on some proposal materials as well. I can stop here, see if there are any questions. If not, maybe I'll actually just keep going, and we can take questions at the end.
Mhm.
Okay, so I did that for about 1.5 years, and then moved to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and I've been with the foundation for about a little over 2 years as of last month. So here's kind of just like some high-level information about the foundation and how we work. So the mission of the foundation is really to create a world where every person has the opportunity to live a healthy and productive life. And our co-chairs, Bill and Melinda, are very serious about this, and making sure like all of our strategies are essentially aligning into this mission. So as you can see, the mission is kind of it's broad, which I like the fact that it's broad because it allows you to do multiple things. So my personal values align with this mission, which is why I joined the foundation. There are 6 different divisions within the foundation. We have a gender equality division. This is a relatively new team that's kind of focused on gender work. We have global development, which is the division I sit under. We have a global growth and opportunity division, which I don't know too much about. I haven't interacted with them a ton. We have a global health division. And kind of the difference between global development and global health at the foundation is that the global health team is very much vaccine disease specific. So they look at malaria, HIV, TB, etc. And the global development is kind of on the delivery side of that. So we look at primary health care, health systems, and how our and kind of evaluating various health systems. We talk about vaccines, and we talk a lot about, I sit under the immunizations team. So lots of conversations about zero dose children, and these are children that have never received childhood vaccinations. These are communities that are very hard to reach. So kind of on the delivery side of that, and then the global health team does a lot of the research and the kind of disease specific work. We also have our global policy and advocacy division, and that's a team that focuses on advocacy internally and externally. And then we have a US programs division. And I think this is the only division that is kind of domestically focused. So they work on education program across the United States, in particularly in trying to increase access to education for disadvantaged students. We are headquartered here in Seattle, Washington, which is where I'm based, but we have office in Washington, DC, South Africa, and London. And then we have 4 country offices. So we have a country office in Ethiopia, Nigeria, India, and China. And I think there is some plan to expand into 2 other countries in Africa, but that have not been announced. So this is kind of just an overview, a high-level overview of the Gates Foundation. Happy to take some questions towards the end. So I've got one more slide, and then we can open it up to Q&A. Okay, so I am a senior program coordinator for an immunizations team that sits under global development at the Gates Foundation. Oops, sorry, I'm gonna go and pause for just a second. My kids just came in. So sorry about that.
We wanted
But
a cameo appearance, you know.
I have 3-year-old twin boys that have tons of energy throughout the day.
I
So
wish I could channel some of that.
okay, so I am, as I was saying, I'm a senior program coordinator, and I sit under an immunizations team within global development at the Gates Foundation. And maybe before I even go into the specifics of what I do, let me kind of just give 2 broad overviews of how we are organized internally at the foundation. So we have kind of, I think of the foundation in two sides of the house. So there's one side that is programmatic work, and then there's one side that is kind of the business side of the house. So as a program coordinator, I sit on the business side of the house. So the programmatic side of the house has roles such as the program officers, senior program officers, deputy directors, and these are folks that are engaged with the grantees. They are our technical experts. And they're the ones that are kind of identifying grantees and working on new concepts and grants and contracts that are aligned with our strategy. And then on the business side of the house, which is where program coordinators, portfolio officers sit, and we are kind of responsible for, we're internally facing. So sorry. I apologize again. This might happen a few more times before we end the call.
No worries. Thank you.
So on the business side of the house, you have program coordinators, portfolio officers, and we are really, this is an internally facing team, and we work closely with program officers to kind of drive grants and contracts forward, make sure that they're aligned with our strategy, and budget for the team, right? So each division or each team gets an annual budget from the co-chairs. And when I say co-chairs, I'm referring to Bill and Melinda. And to make sure that we are kind of within budget for that year. So I think of my work in kind of three buckets. So one is program coordination, which is about 40 to 50% of my time. Portfolio management, which is about 20 to 30, and then spend about 10 to 20% of my time on project management. So when I say program coordination, really, this is really working with program officers to develop, manage, and maintain a grants and contracts portfolio that is worth over 300 million. So as you can see, that this is a lot of money and requires lots of coordination with our leadership team, as well as our program officers. So a lot of my time is kind of really spent here. For example, when a program officer has an idea, they would come to me, and then I make sure that the new concept or the idea that they have in their head is approved by our leadership team and is within strategy. And then once we have that approval, the program officers and I would reach out to the grantee that is identified, and work on working on submitting proposal materials. So I'm working closely with the grantee on that. And once we have those materials back, I and the program officer would drive that forward for a final approval internally, and then finally push that out the door and have it be active. And once the grant or the contract is active, there is kind of maintenance work that needs to be done. There are various deliverables that the grantee or the vendor needs to submit. So making sure that those are on time, as well as if there's additional funding needed. I work with the program officers as well to kind of drive that forward internally. So that's kind of what the program coordination side entails. So a lot of work with grants and contracts. The portfolio management side of my job is really kind of developing, managing and coordinating and sharing pipeline information. So we use the word pipeline at the foundation to say, like, here's our budget and what's within our pipeline. And how much of that will it be approved? How much of that is aligned with the strategy? Are we falling short on our pipeline? Do we think we're going to be underspent or overspent on our budget for the year? And kind of really, I work with the leadership team to make sure that they understand all of the grants and the contracts that are active, those that are in process, and then help them understand what our headroom for the year is, so that we are aligned with that. And then towards the end of the year, between September until December, that's the busiest time for a program coordinator at the foundation. We have tons of year-end deadlines in order to try to push grants and contracts out the door. So really helping the entire team, including the leadership team, understand where we are on our pipeline and what decisions need to be made so that we can hit our annual targets. And then the project management side is essentially really working with the leadership team to help them manage the day-to-day of the various team meetings and such. And typically we have annual, at least once or twice a year, we meet with the co-chairs to provide an update on our strategy and the work that we're doing. And lots of kind of project management goes into preparing for those high-level co-chair meetings. So kind of providing that support for our leadership team. So that's kind of in a nutshell what I do and what the foundation does at large. I want to make sure I leave enough time to answer any of your questions, or just have an open discussion about anything that I've shared today. So let me pause here.
Yeah, are there any questions? Do feel free to unmute or make yourself visible if you wish. If not, you can type in the chat and I'll be happy to relay that question. Well, in the meantime, I'll just ask a quick question. So you started at World Vision, correct? And I guess something that struck me, you said, is that your personal vision aligned with the vision of the organization with Bill and Melinda Gates. So I'm wondering, how did you transition from sort of world, like what sparked that transition, or maybe it was a realization of a skill set, or your values weren't aligned, or I'm just kind of wondering, after a year and a half, maybe what was going on.
Sure. So World Vision was actually a summer practicum that I did while I was at Heller. So then I did, after graduation, I joined Panorama Global. And Panorama Global, to be frank with this team, was not aligned with the organization's culture, was not aligned with mine, and I felt like the work that we were doing was a bit too narrowed for me. And there were very limited opportunities for growth. So I quickly started looking at other opportunities that is more internationally focused, and that has a mission that aligns with my values, as well as organizational culture. This was really important to me. So I actually was able to get this job through a network that I had done in my previous position. So there was a vice president for Panorama Global that I had briefly worked with for maybe like 2 months on the stakeholder engagement strategy. And we both kind of left the organization at the same time. And I reached out to say, hey, I've decided to leave Panorama and I'm looking at other positions. And a couple of weeks later, this position came to her from one of, she was a Gates alum, from one of her former colleagues from Gates Foundation, and she automatically thought of me, and I was able to go through very intensive interview process and get the job. So I think in networking, regardless if you are in a job or at Heller, is super important. You just never know when people are going to think of you. So just having tons of conversations with people. And when I was kind of in between jobs and before I got the Gates Foundation position, I did lots of networking on LinkedIn, kind of reaching out to people that have been at Heller, if they are working for an organization that I thought was interesting, or if they had a position that I thought was interesting. And not really ask for a job, but just have a conversation with them about that, to kind of just learn about their role and the organization that they work for. And this was super helpful to, one, make connections, and then two, people consistently reach out to say, hey, this thing came up, are you interested? So I found that super helpful. So never minimize networking opportunities, I guess.
Great, thank you for that. And you actually went to my second question. I mean, you're here at Heller in Boston, and then your practicum leads you to World Vision, which is in Seattle too, right?
Right.
So then, I mean, you stretched the continental United States, and I'm wondering, how did you break into World Vision? Because after World Vision, you sort of stationed in the Pacific Northwest,
Right.
and then you communicated. It was a contact at Panorama that helped you sort of, or no, maybe it
Okay,
was at
I'll
World.
fix it.
Yeah. So I'm just wondering how. Did you have contacts for the practicum piece, and then how that networking sort of evolved to where you are now?
Yeah, so I moved to Boston for to study at Heller. So originally from Seattle, lived in
Oh,
Seattle, moved to Boston for that. So I had some
okay.
personal contacts here, and I knew I wanted to be back home for the summer. So I was looking at practicum or internship opportunities in the Seattle area. So the practicum with World Vision was just an application that I saw somewhere, and kind of applied for it and interviewed for it and was lucky enough to get it. But what was interesting about that practicum was that even within those short 3 months, made really great connections with my manager and the team that I was on. That actually I'm in touch with my manager from there on a regular basis. And when I was between jobs, I was able to reach out to her and kind of just say, hey, I'm looking for new opportunities, and she was able to make recommendations, even if not within World Vision, from her networks as well. So I found that extremely helpful.
Great, thank you for that. I missed the part where you started
As
with the
yeah, I was
project.
in Seattle already.
Okay.
Yeah.
Students, do you have any questions? Oh, here we go. I'll read it. So, what is the one key piece of advice that you would give someone who's coming to study at the Heller School? So, Benedict, are you talking in terms of the search? Are you talking about academic success, or just generally? What would our guest recommend to a Heller student? Okay, so the search. So perhaps two questions. So what key takeaway would you advise to a current Heller student to be successful academically and in their job search?
Yeah, great questions. So I think to be successful academically at Heller, something that worked um, really well for me was, especially kind of being into programs, was that kind of just making really great connections with other students on in the classrooms. Those were big learning opportunities for me to kind of, especially if you're an MS student. We and my team, we had lots of people who work for the Minister of Health within their countries. So when we talked about health system strengthening, primary healthcare, what that looks like, we had folks on our team that could say like, hey, this has been tried in my country and it didn't work, or like this has been tried in another country and it worked there. So lots of learning opportunities there, sometimes more useful than kind of the content that we were getting in the classroom. So that was a big takeaway for me. And then another piece was I utilized office hours for professors to get more information. So and I think in addition to that, office hours helped me create relationships with professors, which was super helpful. And in some cases, I was able to turn those into mentorship programs, especially when I was looking at jobs, kind of getting close to graduation. Used lots of those time to meet with professors in their office hours to talk about, this is what I'm interested in, like who's working on this, what's the gap, where do I need to be where do I need to be in order to do this type of work? Who do you know in this field that's doing this work, that's open to speak with me? So just used office hours to have diverse conversations with professors, which I thought was super helpful. So the students that I was with, as well as the professors, and kind of trying to spend some time there outside of the day-to-day, right? Because the classes have their own workloads that require tons of time, but kind of outside of those specific activities, I think thinking about, like, you're not going to be at Heller for a long period of time. So how do you maximize your time with your colleagues, your other students in your classroom, your classmates, as well as your professors. One thing that I feel like I didn't do too much was take advantage of some of the networking opportunities. I don't know, Brian, if you guys still have those trips to New York and DC. We had those at the time. I just was never interested to go, but I have classmates that went and made some amazing connections and had great networking opportunities there. So that would be one piece of advice: is if you are able to attend those trips or networking opportunities within Heller, that's the one thing that you are paying for by being at the Heller School. So you should try to take advantage of that. When job searching, to answer the second question, this was really daunting for me when I was getting ready to graduate at Heller. I hadn't found a job. By the time I graduated, I didn't have a job lined up, which made me really nervous. For those of us that are not from Boston, I wasn't sure if I should stay in Boston. I only wanted to stay in Boston if I had a job. If I didn't, my family is based in Seattle, so I wanted to be back in Seattle to have additional support. So there's a lot of nervousness that goes into, especially for those of you that are getting ready to graduate next year. And then, just like this, we had Heller alums that came in and talked about how they found their next job or what they were doing, and those were really great to hear, because you start to see that people that are graduating from Heller are finding jobs, maybe not right away, but they are landing in great places around the world. So that was helpful. So again, going back to networking, try to do a lot of that at Heller, and then right after graduation as well. Reached out to my professors because I graduated in May and I didn't get the job with Panorama until September. So there was a 4-month gap, which is average. But at the time, you freak out a little and you're just like, I'm never gonna find this job, even though I have 2 master's degrees. So I tried to really network within Heller and after Heller. So that was helpful. I reached back out to my professors at Heller to say, do you have connections within, this specific organization? So networking was helpful, and kind of just sending applications everywhere, right? At the time, and this is something that I don't do anymore, I was kind of sending job applications to almost anything I saw online. And of course, I used the same resume, the same cover letter, kind of just tweaked it a little bit and sent it out. I don't think that's a helpful approach, in my opinion. 4 years after Heller, just because I didn't really hear back from any of those positions. So I shifted my strategy into kind of saying, okay, I want to be intentional about my job search, right? So finding specific organizations that I was interested in, finding specific roles that I knew I wanted to do, and kind of just investing time into those applications. And I found that to be helpful, and that's how I was able to land my first job. So I guess one piece of advice there is, instead of sending 30 applications a week, maybe you send 5 to 7 applications, and you really tailor your application materials or your resume and your cover letter specifically to those positions, because believe it or not, people are and I've been on hiring team internally at the foundation, and we do look at the cover letter, right? We want to see because sometimes the resume can feel like a list of things that people have done, but in the cover letter, that's when their passion for the work comes out. They tell you a little bit about why they're interested at the organization that they're applying for, and why they think they're a good fit for that position. So yeah, kind of just have a strategy, a job search strategy that is intentional, and you can tell when when applicants are being intentional about their way when you're looking at it from the other side. So let me stop there.
Yeah, thank you for that. I'll answer your question. Our tracks have been on hiatus for the last 2 years because of COVID. So the last year that we had tracks was 2020, right before COVID. We were able to visit New York and DC
Okay.
through a miracle. This coming 2023, we are hosting DC Trek only. So that's an adjustment. And this year is really about getting a feel. All our employers back in the office, are they willing to, accommodate a group of students? So we're outreaching now, and we're learning what it's going to look like. So those still happen, yes. And then what I would say too is, in terms of outcomes, yeah, you were freaking out at 4 months. And what I can say is, just looking at data for our outcomes, students who graduate from Heller, like roughly a third are employed at graduation. It takes roughly another third up to 3 months, and then that final third up to 6 months, maybe a little bit more. So, it does take time, right?
Right.
And so you should be prepared for that. That's normal. Be kind to yourself. And then the last thing I want to echo that you said is, the search is really about this balance of quality and quantity, right? So yes, the more applications you send out, as you were doing, the more chances you're gonna get someone to express interest. But really, if you're called to do the job, is it going to be of interest to you? And that's that quality piece. So yes, if I'm sending out a massive amount of applications, I'm probably going to hear something, but is it a job that I'm truly invested in and motivated by, passionate about, those kinds of things? So I found your feedback very valuable. Thank you.
Yeah, and when you do hear back from those applications, when you kind of just randomly send your application to the few times that I did hear back, I had to go back to the job post to be like, oh, what did I apply to? And then a lot of times it was like, oh, I'm not really interested in this. So I think being intentional is helpful. And I know the biggest thing that has happened since I was at Heller now is COVID. So I'm sure, kind of being a student during COVID or post COVID has its own challenge that I'm not able to speak to. But the one other piece of advice I guess I would also share is that I regularly get excuse me, in my personal LinkedIn page, I get messages from current Heller students that are interested in learning about the Gates Foundation, or interested in learning about my work or my previous work. And I am always happy to take those on and schedule a one-on-one call with folks. Because 4 years ago, I was in that exact same place and I was doing the exact same thing, kind of reaching out to people in LinkedIn. So if you are interested in learning about the Gates Foundation or the global health space in general, feel free to reach out to me directly on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to find time for us to connect, and happy to be available that way.
No, that's fantastic. Thank you for giving back.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any other questions from the students? Surely there are questions. And is that all the material you had prepared?
Yeah, that's all
okay.
I had.
Okay. So in that case, what I don't want to do is just keep people on the line to keep them on the line. But we do have him in front of us right now. If you have questions, again, you feel free to put it in the chat if you don't want to unmute yourself, and I'll relay that message. because otherwise I don't want to make everyone stare at each other until 2:00. So what would you say has been maybe a difficult adjustment moving, sort of Heller into a professional role that maybe caught you off guard that perhaps you weren't necessarily prepared for skill-wise?
Yeah, that's a good question. Let me think about it. So I guess one thing was that I was at Heller for 2 years, and when you're a student, your mindset is very different, right? So I've been away from the professional setting for 2 years. And what was it one of the challenge with my first position at Panorama was that I was kind of blown away by how fast some of the professional setting was, and by how quickly people moved, and by how fast the work really moved. And I don't really know how to I guess I don't really have an advice on how to prepare for that, but kind of just it requires a mental shift in your day to day. Where at Heller, you're a student, you're digesting information, you have the opportunities to ask questions, you can go to office hours and connect with classmates and such. In the professional space, you're really putting all of that to work, and sometimes that could be rough at the beginning. My experience with Panorama was that it's a very fast-paced organization, and so is Gates, but in a different light, I would say. So kind of mentally being prepared to, from the get-go, there wasn't a lot of ramp-up time, not a whole lot of onboarding time as well. So you might kind of just jump into a position, and they might ask you to hit the ground running from the get-go, which again goes back to when you're applying to these positions, make sure you're asking tons of questions during the interview process. I like to think of the interview process, it's for you and for them, right? So instead of kind of just saying yes I could do all these things, being very open and clear about the things that you are able to do, the areas that you're interested in growing in, because once you get the position, if you're not setting their expectations in the interview process, you're expected to meet those expectations, which can be challenging. So kind of just making that mental shift in, okay, I'm not a student now, and I need to be able to hit the ground running, deliver on what is expected of me, and which is and the other thing that I've learned from working at Panorama is also looking at the organizational culture, right? So instead of just saying, hey, the Gates Foundation sounds great, I'm going to apply and work there, maybe connecting with people that work at Gates Foundation and talk about and having conversations about the culture, opportunities for growth and things like that, because a lot of I assume a lot of the positions that we as Heller graduates are getting from the get-go are not the positions that may be well suited for us, right? So they might be admin positions, they might be on the lower end of the stick. So connecting with people that work at those organizations and kind of having informational interviews to learn more before accepting the positions would be another piece of advice.
Fantastic.
And then one other thing that I was going to, offer is that a lot of times when people reach out to me and we have not regular, but when we have one-on-one conversations about the Gates Foundation and what they're interested in, basically what I say is like, go on our website, look through, I think we have tons of openings right now. Look through those positions. If you see a position that you're interested in but have questions, feel free to reach out to me and I can talk you through those. And if there are specific positions that you're interested in, I might be able to recommend you internally, kind of flag your application to our hiring team internally. So that kind of your application is a bit more prioritized. But in order to do that, I would need kind of a blurb of why you're interested in that position and why I should be recommending you. But happy to do that.
Well, that's fantastic.
Hope you don't mind if I hop in here real quick. Going back to the point you just made, and I apologize, I showed up a little bit late. I missed kind of
No,
the
no
first half
worries.
of your presentation. But going back to the last point of informal, I guess, interviews or conversations, what do you find is the best way to sort of start engaging in those conversations?
Do you mean how do you reach out to those people, or once you're in a meeting with that person, like how
How do
should you
you
frame?
how do you reach out to those people? Right now, I've
Okay.
basically been either emailing or just calling, and I'm wondering if like there's a specific way or something like that.
Yeah, I use LinkedIn quite often for that purpose. And people have reached out. I was just saying that people from Heller have reached out to me to and kind of just saying, hey, I'm a current Heller student. I'm interested in learning about the Gates Foundation and your role. Do you have 30 minutes in the next few weeks for us to connect? And I've been more than happy to take those calls. So I think LinkedIn is a great way to do that. One other thing that I've kind of done in the past also is if, for example, Bryan is connected to someone within an organization that I'm interested in, I would reach out to Bryan and just say, hey, so and so is in your network. Do you mind connecting me, introducing me to that person via LinkedIn to set that informational interview? And believe it or not, people are quite gracious with their time and are usually more than happy to speak to you, because the chances are they have been in that same place, kind of doing the same thing. So yeah, I've used LinkedIn quite a bit. Haven't really used emails, but if you have someone's email, I think that's also another way to do it. I think in the professional setting, at least, people are quite active on LinkedIn. So I would say LinkedIn would be the first option.
All right, thank you.
And Vincent, I think sort of a soft message is something like, I'm currently studying this. I see that you work in this organization, which is closely related. Might you have 20 minutes to chat via Zoom? Would love to learn more about your work or your organization, something like that. Just something soft, open, and inviting, and people, as mentioned, are quite receptive to that.
And also maybe giving the people the option, like, hey, if you're not available to speak in the next few weeks, can I send you a couple of questions via either email or LinkedIn for them to address?
So are there any other questions? Got a few more minutes. I mean, if not, it sounds like you're very open to students connecting with you via LinkedIn and then sort of answering maybe more personal questions. So I appreciate that. Any final last words for the group here?
Just to say thank you so much, Bryan, for reaching out. And thanks everyone for having me today. Like I said at the beginning of my presentation, I really did enjoy my time at Heller. It's a great organization to work for. You've got lots of resources, lots of networking opportunities. So kind of try to step away from your day-to-day classwork and really try to capitalize and take advantage of the networking opportunities, the time with professors and classmates, because a lot of those things is what you remember after you leave Heller. Those are the things that stick with you, and those are the people, your classmates and your professors are the ones that are really going to support you once you leave Heller. So try to carve time out for those kind of things. Like I said, I am also more than happy to stay connected. So feel free to request me on LinkedIn or send a private message, and I promise to respond.
I have to say, I've never had anyone respond so quickly to an unsolicited outreach. I was like, oh, this is amazing. Thank you
Yeah,
for being so
anything that comes from
responsive.
Heller School, I'm like, okay, I could take this. So yeah, happy to stay connected.
Wonderful. Well, it was a pleasure getting to know you. We're grateful for you, and thank you so much for your insight, your advice, your knowledge, and everything you've shared here today. And I hope that the students take it, absorb it, and use it as they make informed career decisions. So thank you everyone
Sounds
for your
good.
time. And I look forward to being in touch with everyone.
Yeah, thank you both for putting this on. It's really nice.
Great.
you,
Sounds good.
Vincent.
Thank you so much, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you.